Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us in session 3 of our study through Galatians. I hope you guys are having a great time at your group, maybe eating food, hanging out, getting to know each other. I love myself being part of a life group. I think it's critical for us to be connected with each other. So thank you guys so much for making the effort to be a part of your life group. In our study right now, we're going through the book of Galatians, and we've kind of been looking at a snapshot of each chapter. The last 2 weeks, we've looked at chapter 1 in our first session, chapter 2 in our second session, and today we're going to look at part of chapter 3 in our third session, and we're going to be talking about chapter 3, verse 10 through 14. And so I'm really looking forward to looking at this with you guys. If you take a look at the book of Galatians, it's really interesting because it's a book written to a group of people who were probably pretty new in their faith in Jesus. They're pretty new in their relationship with Jesus. They had been pagan worshipers. They were far from God, as far as you can imagine. And Paul, who was planting churches all over that part of the known world, planted churches in this area. And these people had had a radical transformation. Jesus came and rescued them and transformed their lives. Well, then as time went on, there were these people that are referred to as Judaizers. They are people who were trying to take the Jewish law and put that on people, telling them that Jesus is not enough. Christ is not enough for you to be made right with God. You also need to do this, this, and this. And so it began to be very weighty on these people. It began to create a lot of confusion for the people in the church in Galatia and in the region, because these letters that would be written, like the book of Galatians, would be shared with other churches all over that known part of the known world. They would circulate these letters, which we would refer to as a book, but it's actually a letter written from Paul to these people, and he's addressing this theological miscommunication, this theological heresy, this theological breakdown where these people are thinking that they are not right with God unless they keep the law, unless they're made right. That they can only be made right through keeping these laws of God. And so we're going to be looking at chapter 3. I want you guys to check this out. You guys are going to be looking through verse 10 through 14. But I want to look specifically at verse 10. And we're going to go through, well, I may end up reading all of it. Here we go. Check this out, what it says. It says, all who rely on observing the law are under a curse. Wow. If you in your life are relying on your religious efforts, whether it's the Old Testament law or some law that is cultural that you've created, that you think you're going to be made right with God because you do this, he says you're under a curse. To be under a curse, that's a very strong word. That is very strong language to tell you you're in trouble. You don't want to base your relationship with God on this. He says, for it is written, cursed is everyone who does not continue to do everything written in the book of the law. Check this out, verse 11. Clearly, no one is justified before God by the law. To be justified is to be made right with God. When there is eternal judgment at the end of this life, every person that's ever lived will stand before God the Father, and they will either be justified or they will be cast away. To be justified can only happen through Jesus. And he's saying here that no one can be justified. That is when God, the supreme judge, judges on your eternity. You can only be made right with God through Christ alone. These religious leaders were trying to apply the law back on the backs of these people and weigh them down, making them believe that they had to follow the law to be made right. And he's saying, no. No one is justified before God by the law, through keeping the law. Because, check this out, the righteous will live by faith. The law is by faith. It's by faith. It's by faith in Jesus that we are made right. The law is not based on faith. The Old Testament law is not based on faith. On the contrary, the man who does these things will live by them. Check this out. Verse 13, I love this. Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law by becoming a curse for us. Okay, this is really important. To be redeemed means to be made alive, to be rescued. Once we were spiritually dead, there was no hope for us. All that was ahead of us was separation from God. And Jesus redeems us. He picks us out of the pit and puts our feet on solid ground. Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law. The reason that we were cursed is because no one could be made right before God through keeping the law. But Jesus became that curse for us. He fully kept the law, and then on the cross, He suffered and died for the penalty that I deserve, that you deserve for your sin. That is how much God loves you. That is how much God loves me. It's an amazing thing to think about what Christ has done. And here's the deal. These religious leaders were trying to come in and they were trying to steal this truth. They were trying to confuse that truth. And Paul is continuing to charge them and encourage them to say, no, you are free. You are made free in Jesus. You are made right before God the Father based on nothing you have done and everything that Jesus has done. And the crazy thing about it is when you actually live life looking through that lens rather than a religious, I've got to keep these rules to be made right with God kind of lens, what's amazing is actually more obedience takes place because you're not doing right before God to earn something. You're doing right before God because of what you've been given. Man, as you guys discuss this more and look at these verses in your group, I hope that God will continue to challenge you to live free, to live by the Spirit. God's Spirit now lives in you, and He's calling us to live by that Spirit. We no longer live by a set of rules or the law. We live by the Spirit. Now, that doesn't mean that we aren't desiring to want to honor God and keep what His Word says. No. But we don't keep the Word to get. We keep His Word because of what we've been given. Man, I hope you guys have a great time in your group. Thanks so much.